food, drugs, or ideas, what you consume influences who you become. On the Mind and Matter podcast, we learn together from the best scientists and thinkers alive today about how your mind-body reacts to what you feed it. Before starting Mind and Matter, I spent 10 years in academia doing scientific research. I got a PhD in neuroscience where I focused on neuroendocrinology and the neurobiology of behavior, and before that, I specialized in molecular, developmental, and evolutionary genetics. I use my scientific background to help parse and translate the information that guests share on the podcast. In addition to the podcast, I write long-form written content inspired by the show where I integrate what I've learned across episodes. I also have a free weekly newsletter where I provide you with upcoming guests, share links, and provide commentary on scientific studies and research that I'm reading, and more. Visit mindandmatter.substack.com to find all of my content. Hey everyone, a great way to support my efforts is to visit my support page at mindandmatter.substack.com. A link to that page is in the episode description, or you can search for it on the Substack page itself. The support page has an up-to-date list of my affiliate partners. These are companies I work with, and if you buy those products through those links or using the discount codes provided, those will get you a great deal on a variety of products related to optimizing physical, metabolic, or mental health and vitality. These are all products I use myself, and some of them are directly related to podcast episodes or formulated by Mind and Matter guests. For example, there's a great product called Keto Citra, formulated by a kidney biologist who is on episode number 186. It contains the ketone body BHB together with several minerals in a precise ratio formulated with kidney health in mind. There are also links to products like physical technology devices to track your metabolic health, digital applications to help you find and learn about food and consumer products, and more. One product I use every day is the AquaTrue water filter. I recommend this to everyone because it gets everything out of your drinking water. Heavy metals, microbes, endocrine disruptors, microplastics, you name it. Other charcoal or gravity-based filters that a lot of people use don't get everything out, they just get some of the stuff out. So I really like the AquaTrue product. You can look for a link to my affiliate partners on my support page or directly in the episode description to this episode, or you can go to mindandmatter.substack.com to find it there. Flynn McGuire, thank you very much for joining me here on a Saturday.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Do you want to start off by just telling everyone a little bit about yourself? What's your background and what do you do every day?
Yeah, so I'm a postgraduate year 4 physical medicine and rehabilitation resident at the University of Utah. I'll be a rising sports medicine fellow at the University of Utah next year. And my day-to-day clinically is spent kind of either in the rehab hospital or in outpatient clinics, helping patients with neurologic recovery as well as kind of the sports medicine musculoskeletal issues.
Okay, so you're an MD, you're a physician,
Yep.
You're doing clinical work. You've also written academic papers, so you are involved to some extent in the research side of things.
Yeah, I like research. After I'm done with residency, I'm hoping that I'm at least sticking around in academic medicine, kind of pursuing research as part of my career. And that kind of means that for fun on the side of all the clinical stuff, I'm a big nerd and I read research and I like to write stuff. So,
okay, great. So yeah, you've written some good stuff on this, and this is a big topic that a lot of people have asked me about that I wanted to know more about as well, that I don't know a lot about compared to other topics, but I know something about this stuff. Peptides. That's the basic subject for us today. In particular, some of the peptides that are being used more commonly in recent years that are being used for things like injury recovery, tissue repair, often in the context of sports and athletics and things like that. Let's start very basic for a couple minutes and just give people a general sense of what we're talking about on a basic level. What are peptides?
So peptides, and I feel like for some reason it's become a buzzword in the past, at least to my mind, 10 years, but really 5 years. They're just short chains of amino acids. The most like prototypical peptide, I feel like, and everyone's heard of, is insulin, right? It's a peptide that we produce endogenously and also give exogenously people with diabetes. So like there's nothing magic about them. They're just chains of amino acids that are bigger than small molecules, but shorter than big proteins. They're kind of in that middle ground.
Got it. So we've got amino acids. Those are the building blocks of proteins. Proteins are just polypeptides, many amino acids strung together and then folded into some structure. And the protein then does something functional based on that structure. So a peptide is really just a small protein.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, and we've been coming up with more and more uses from them. I think another one that everyone knows now are kind of the GLP receptor agonists, the Ozempics, the tirzepatides, right? Those are also peptides. It's just another pharmacological tool in the tool belt for ways we develop drugs and other things.
Yeah, yeah. And so peptides, we can talk about synthetic peptides and we'll talk about some of those, but these are also endogenous compounds. You've already named a few for us. Insulin's a peptide, GLP, the Ozempic drugs that are out there are based on endogenous peptide called GLP, collagen peptides. There's a bunch of them we could talk about, but this is just a class of biomolecules that's inside of us. And then we can produce other peptides that maybe aren't already inside of us or are just synthetic versions of the ones that are inside of us. But this is a whole big class of molecules.
Yep.
And so what do you think from your vantage point as an MD and as a researcher, but what do you think is sort of the origins of the surge in popularity of peptides recently? Can you just give me a basic sense for that? Like how long has this been increasing in popularity, and where did it come from? Is this like a bodybuilder type of thing, and it's spread from there, or where is this coming from?
I think kind of all of the above, kind of like very multifactorial, right? I kind of think about the rise of podcasts and social media and the ability to have, I guess, expertise talk to you through your phone or through your computer really easily. And the ability to do kind of do your own research and all those things that have like risen in the past a bit with the rise of technology. And then couple that with, I'd say, kind of the uh, biohacky stuff that I feel like was maybe the start of this like 15 years ago. I'm thinking of like maybe like the Ben Greenfield. I'm sure he's still around, but at least when I was in like college, I feel like or undergrad, that he was kind of one of the first people on the scene talking about things, and like the Rhonda Patrick, I think, is another person in the space that I feel like has been around for a long time. Right, and those things become popular. Other people start their own thing. And in some capacity, I think some of it is that if you got to keep talking about stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually you got to keep looking further and further afield for new subjects, and keep looking into literature to see what's out there, and
Yeah.
um you got to go further and further afield sometimes, and then couple that with COVID happening, and then all of a sudden people kind of losing some distrust in the medical system, and
Right,
people
right.
looking for other stuff. um I
So
think
it's
it's all those things kind of come together all at the same time.
yeah, it sounds like this is an area where, as we'll discuss, there's research on this stuff. There's preclinical literature that we'll talk about. There's, what we call traditional institutional official research happening and has been happening for quite a while. But there's also this world of, biohacking, bro science, whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, just people out in the world trying stuff because they're into bodybuilding or they're into athletics or they're into whatever, health and longevity from some vantage point. And they are self-experimenting with things. And so what I guess the COVID era did is it was coupled with this change of technology that we've all been living through, where we have the internet now, we have social media, we have podcasts. There's just more ways for people experimenting on their own to talk out loud about this stuff. And then there's also the what we'll call the official research that's out there.
Yeah.
And so all of these information streams are now kind of cross-fertilizing in interesting ways. And peptides seem to be at the nexus of like, what we call bro science or gym science, and then the actual academic research that happens, and then the clinical practice.
Yeah, and I do feel like there's uh something to some of the bro science, right? I'll use an example of blood flow restriction training,
Hmm.
Katsu. Bodybuilders were, putting the idea with blood flow restriction training is that if you put essentially what is a blood pressure cuff around your arm, say, and you cut off enough of the blood flow that you have arterial blood flow going in, but you're blocking venous blood flow out. That all the metabolites from whatever exercise you're doing build up there and send a signal to the muscle to grow more. And you can get roughly the same muscular hypertrophy using 30% of one rep max. So it's like a lot easier on your joints in kind of my world. It's become much more of a thing for rehab in like after an ACL injury, for example. But bodybuilders were messing with that, I want to say in like the 80s, right?
Right,
So,
right,
and the literature has kind of started to really catch up to it,
right,
30 years later. So,
right. So
you
I
know,
mean, there's people out there that were doing this
yeah,
experimentally, like on themselves,
yeah,
and they were seeing results. Like obviously, if you're a bodybuilder or a gym bro, whatever you want to call it, they are very results oriented. Like if they're
yeah,
not getting stronger or bigger, that's all that matters to them. So there's this kind of weird thing that happens where they can discover things based on outcomes, like really physical outcomes like that, faster than the research world can like dissect all of the mechanics and quote unquote truly understand if something's happening or what's going on.
yeah. And I would say we're kind of within obviously that bodybuilding space, bro science stuff. I feel like often it might take longer, and this is my own opinion,
Mm-hmm.
for stuff in that space to then translate into kind of mechanisms or clinical trials or any of those things. Because when I think of like some of the bodybuilders that I talk to and I've had in clinic and stuff, it's like they're doing a lot of stuff at the same time.
Right, right. It's
So
a
it's like,
very uncontrolled,
yeah,
natural experiment.
yeah. So it's like eventually through word of mouth and like anecdote, those things bubble up to the surface of like
Yeah,
what's working, but then it gets picked up by mainstream science and it gets tested and yada yada yada. And then there's another 10 or 15 years from that point on before it's like, okay, we have a drug or we have a protocol or we have a new therapy or right. So it's a long, long process.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's kind of fascinating just to watch how some of these ideas percolate and evolve over time in this sort of soup of, the academic research and the real world self experimentation.
For sure.
But when we talk about peptides, so the word as it's used, I hear it most often used. Peptides is referring to things that are usually used for like injury recovery, tissue repair, or in a way that's maybe akin to like anabolic steroids. You're trying to get more bang for your buck when it comes to athletic performance, muscle growth, things like that. If I go to the gym and I'm hearing people talk about peptides and I'm encountering people that are maybe taking some peptides, how many of these things are out there? Are we talking about like a couple different peptides that are commonly used? Are there several of them, or is it like dozens and dozens and dozens, or even hundreds?
Uh, um, I guess I mean, within all the peptides that are available, hundreds.
Hundreds.
Within the peptides that are kind of used for musculoskeletal recovery, um, there's certainly more out there than I am aware of. I think there's only like, I want to say roughly 10-ish, that seem to be more popular. The two most popular, I think, are kind of the BPC body protection compound 157, which is um, one of the things that I just wrote a paper on relatively recently. And then thymosin beta 4 or TB-500, which are technically two different things, but kind of get lumped into the same block.
Yeah.
Those are online, the extremely well named from a marketing perspective, Wolverine Stack, right? Whoever came up with that,
So
it's marketing
Wolverine,
gold.
Wolverine, as in like X-Men,
Yep,
the Wolverine.
right. The guy that regenerates really fast and you can't hurt him, right?
So yeah, I want to ask you about these ones in particular because people are talking about them. So let's start with BP-157. You've written about that one in particular. Very simple to start here. What is BP-157? What does that stand for again? And what does it basically do?
So it's body protection compound 157. It's derived from gastric juice. I want to say a lab in the Czech Republic in the early 90s. For whatever reason, I should one day I should look into the history of why they decided to do this. Pulled it out of gastric juice and started putting it in various different cell cultures and tissue types to see what it does. And over the past 25 years, they've kind of developed kind of a preclinical literature, meaning in like mouse models, rodent models, petri dishes, saying that, hey, this might do something for kind of various musculoskeletal tissue types. Like from like bone to tendon to muscle. Maybe it might help healing move a little faster if there's issues.
So BP, so who names these, by the way? Like, why was it named this?
Not a clue. Again, maybe again, good marketing if they pull out some random thing in your gastric juice and put it in a, a in a mouse where the Achilles tendon in this mouse kind of heals better compared to the other group. They're like body protection compound. Like, okay,
Hmm. And
good
so
naming.
what do we know about this thing from the preclinical literature? Like, what is it doing in animals? What are sort of the mechanics for how it's working in animal tissue? I'll let you kind of pick which. Maybe we'll go through like multiple tissue systems here because it's not one thing in one type of tissue. That's my understanding. So, like, what sort of effects does it seem to be having?
Um, uh, I would say pleiotropic effects, meaning like lots of
Mhm.
different effects. And I guess that's probably in somewhat different than some earlier pharmacologic developments where you take one pill that targets one thing and has a very kind of clear, unitary, defined mechanism of action, where
Mhm.
it's going to
Mhm.
bind to this receptor to do this one
Yeah.
thing.
That's what
I think,
what the pharmaceutical industry would call like a clean drug, like one receptor interaction. It's very restricted. Peptides like BPC-157, you said they're pleiotropics, many effects. It's almost like what a pharmaceutical person would call a dirty drug. It's doing lots of different stuff.
yeah, and I think, and this, I guess, this is more of a comment on maybe medicine in general. Is
Hmm.
in my maybe it's possible that like some of the low-hanging fruit in early drug development, we've hit a lot of those easier things where it's like, hey, we found this one receptor, we know it does this one thing, therefore we can target it. And now that the things that's left are more complicated, it's possible that that it's going to take dirtier drugs to come up with therapies that just don't work just by targeting one thing at a time. So maybe some of these peptides will be able to do that. And
Yeah.
in the case of BPC-157, right, it suppresses the beta adrenergic system. It upregulates VEGF, which is one of the things that helps grow new blood vessels. It hits the enos like nitric oxide pathways that help kind of dilate blood vessels and bring blood flow to an area. And that's only a couple of the things. I mean, there's also some neuromodulatory stuff that it might
Yeah.
might do
Yeah.
as well. Some might have some effects on NMDA receptors. That's kind
Yeah.
of outside of the MSK stuff, but
Yeah, but it's doing multiple things, many things. It's worth saying too, like when we say things like clean versus dirty drug, those are pharmaceutical terms that
yeah,
come with some like value judgments baked into them
yeah,
that we don't need to get into. But most molecules in biology are pleiotropic, or at least many of them
yeah,
are. They do
for
lots of
sure.
different things, and there can be advantages and disadvantages to that in different contexts.
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
mean, and that's side effects in drugs, right? It's like,
right,
hey,
right.
the effect we want with the drug is the thing that we're going to use it to treat, and the dirty off-target effects are the side effects. Like we don't want it to do those things, but we can't help it.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of the vascular effects here, you mentioned some of them. Let's just go through them in a little more detail. So it sounds like BPC-157 is basically going to promote things like angiogenesis and cell proliferation. So like new vasculature forming and things like that.
Yep. I mean the VEGF pathway. I mean it's a huge pathway, right? That's kind of the top of that pathway, right? If you're upregulating VEGF down the line, you're going to upregulate the PI3K, ATK, kind of circ caveolin 1 pathways, which then caveolin 1 will also kind of insert itself into that nitric oxide enzymatic activity pathway that is separately also activated kind of further upstream um, as well by BPC-157. So there's kind of some like overlap
Yeah.
in the targets as well. In my guess is that's probably one of the for at least BPC-157, that's probably one of the main ways that it works in rodents is
Yeah.
kind of through those two pathways. Um, but there's also some upregulation through kind of um, fibroblast activity and collagen activity in the extracellular matrix for like tendon and ligament healing downline as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And kind of myogenesis and decreased fibrosis in muscles, right? That's
Yeah.
all kind of in that soup of the literature saying that, hey, this does a bunch of different things.
Yeah. So in general, it's having this kind of anabolic effect where it's going to help, in this case, vascular tissue to regrow or to grow. And I guess that's what
Yeah.
you'd expect, right? If it's having effects that are going to be beneficial for either injury recovery
Yeah.
or like muscle growth in like a athletic sense, like a muscle building sense, you're going to need to build new vasculature. You want things to be bigger. More blood needs to come
Yeah.
in. Like it's going to have this directional effect.
Yeah. But I want to limit the anabolic to the like the the use of the word kind of in the scientific context of just getting bigger and growing,
Yeah.
right? Not anabolic to like the gym where it's like, hey, you're gonna put on a bunch of muscle, right?
Yeah. So the distinction here, I guess, for people would be anabolic versus catabolic. Basically, in
Yeah.
biochemistry, anabolic processes are things that build tissue. Catabolic processes break down tissue. This is an anabolic process, but it's also, as you're saying, important to distinguish that between like heavy anabolic steroid use, which would be like pushing things way, way, way to the anabolic side.
Yeah. And this just seems to like I and this is again the gestalt I get from this literature that it just kind of nudges things along,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm. And so the other thing I want to ask you about too is some of the neural effects, because as at least some people will know, when we think about things like tissue repair, muscle growth, both in development, in strength training, all that stuff, there's really important interactions between the neural side and the muscular side. Muscles, need neural stimulation to grow and to function. You need them to move and control your muscles. And so it kind of makes sense to me that something like this, a peptide like this, would have both vascular and neural effects. You mentioned some of those things just a minute ago, but can you talk a little bit more about the neural effects? Is this crossing the blood-brain barrier and going into the brain? Is it operating just at the neuromuscular junction? What do we know in terms of its effects on neurons?
I don't know if it's crosses in the blood-brain barrier. It might. I just don't know. But I can say that like in terms of like the neuromuscular junction,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like it might stabilize the acetylcholine receptor, which is kind of the main receptor um, at the neuromuscular junction that receives signals from the brain to then flex the muscle or kind of fire the muscle, right? So it might stabilize those receptors to hang around, right? If you get a damaged muscle and you lose those receptors, then if the nerve comes back and you're missing a lot of those receptors, it's harder to fire the muscle, right? So it might help in that capacity. Um, it might kind of stabilize some dopamine or serotonin, GABA signaling as well, just to kind of maintain homeostasis after an injury. So, right, if you get a big calcium dump around your muscles after an injury, or plausibly in the brain, again, I don't know if it crosses the blood-brain barrier, that kind of stabilizing levels of those neurotransmitters would be beneficial.
Yeah, yeah. And so,
But to be fair, I'm far less versed in the plausible neurological effects of BBC-157
yeah.
than the kind of musculoskeletal
So what
effects.
people are so how how many people are using this thing today? Can you give me like a sense for that? Is this like a really niche thing, or are there quite a number of people out there using BP-157 just in
Um,
general?
I guess it's one of those things that's kind of hard to put specific numbers on.
Yeah.
But if you get on social media or YouTube or try to go find where to purchase these things online, you can find it everywhere.
Mhm.
So just from that, a lot. Can I put specific numbers to it? I don't think I can,
Yeah,
but
but it's not like an ultra niche thing where it's like only these like super extreme weirdos at certain gyms and certain places. It's become fairly popular. We don't know precisely how popular, but like you see the stuff kind of everywhere online.
yeah, no, I mean, maybe an example of this is like my friend's dad, who's in his 60s, you know, knows that I researched this stuff and was asking me about it because I he knew that I was researching it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And he found it, right? So and like mainstream enough that the Secretary Kennedy, I believe, had made some comments that some of these banned peptides, I think 12 or 14 of them, they're considering um, allowing compounding pharmacies to compound again.
yeah, yeah. And so what? So there's a lot to like unpack here. So you said banned peptides. Like I want to get into like how much do we know about these things? How long have we known what we know? What do we not know? And like why were they banned and all of that stuff? So let's just start here. What are people claiming these things are good for today? The people that are using BPC-157 out in the real world, what are they using it for? And then maybe after that we'll talk about how much of that is really backed by research.
Yeah. So I think the claim currently is that if you've got um, uh, some joint pain or tendonitis or a muscle tear from exercise that's nagging and won't go away, if you use BPC-157 or TB-500 or TB-4, that it's you're going to make it go away or heal completely in a relatively short amount of time. I think that's the claim.
Got it. So the basic claim is this will expedite the recovery from injury or how your body's repairing the tissue that's coming from your exercise or whatever.
Yep.
Got it. And so how do people take this? Is it a local injection? Can it be taken orally? Either or?
So I've seen both. And I guess there's some comments to make about that, right? If let's take the oral route in this case. Um, there's a lot of things that have to go on for an oral drug to make it to the tendonitis in your knee and do something.
Right, right.
Right? It has to make it past your stomach acid. It has to be absorbed in your intestines. It has to make it through all those cells. It has to get into your blood. It has to go to wherever the injury is and then get out of your blood and into those tissues. And there's a lot of steps involved there with a lot of transporters and other enzymes that have to be like, it's even getting there at all.
Yeah. A lot of opportunity for it to not get there.
Yeah. And I can say that BPC has been studied for kind of issues in the gut. So it could help with some of those things, maybe again on preclinical work there. But as far as I've seen, like there is no evidence to say that taking it orally is going to help a musculoskeletal issue.
Got it. So are people mostly injecting this at the local
Mhm.
site of injury?
Yeah. So either at the site and the other part where I've seen like somewhat claims that I think go way further than just what is like logically plausible of like, say I hurt my Achilles tendon, and if I inject it into my thigh, somehow it's going to help my Achilles tendon. Again, the leaps you're making there that a subcutaneous injection or intramuscular injection into your thigh is somehow the compound's gonna migrate down to your Achilles and help it, which is
Difficult to think about.
not likely.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so people are injecting this locally. It seems like a lot of people claim that it helps at
Yep.
least a little bit, and sometimes it helps a lot. It can help make the recovery faster, or maybe get rid of some nagging pain or dysfunction that doesn't seem to be going away. So people who are obviously doing strenuous physical activity are probably interested in this. People who are getting older and they're just recovering more slowly with age are probably interested in this. Does what people are saying out in the world today generally match up with what we know from the preclinical literature? Does it do these types of tissue recovery, regeneration things in animals?
Um, it appears to, but I have to stress it. I mean, that's limited to animals, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
functionally or realistically no evidence in humans that this does anything. Um, right?
So there's no like clinical trials where they've given, randomized control trial, give some people BPC-157 versus a placebo. There's like nothing on that.
No, I mean, we when we wrote our review, there was one very small retrospective study. I think it had like 14 or 16 people in it, where they gave participants, I think it was a knee injection, intra-articular knee, so inside the knee joint, injection of BPC-157 as well as or an injection of the combination of TB-500 and
Yeah.
BPC-157, and then ask them a few months later, like, "Hey, did your knee get better?"
Hmm.
And
So why are these things, I don't know all of the regulatory details here, but apparently this is like FDA category 2, whatever that means. A lot of sports leagues have banned this. Why, if we don't really know what it's doing in humans, like why is that the case? Is it a cautionary thing where these organizations by default sort of ban things because they could be performance enhancing or could be dangerous, but we don't know anything? Like, where does that come from if we know so little?
I mean, I guess I don't know how the WADA or the FDA decides to ban things, but in this case, right, if there's wide use of a substance that
Mhm.
we really don't know what it does in people and they're injecting it in themselves, like that's a concern. Um,
Right.
there's a very real possibility, for both TB-500 and BPC-157 that there's could be some implications for tumor genesis and cancer, right? If
Right.
you're
Right.
if you're creating a whole lot of new blood vessels into something, I mean, that's a very common way that cancer grows and spreads.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess
And
naturally you would think, if this is right, this is a compound that's promoting tissue growth, angiogenesis, vascularization, you would expect that to push you in the direction of say, cancer growth. Now, you just said like we don't have randomized control trials on what these things do. So certainly we don't have long-term trials that actually show this in humans, but I guess
yeah,
a priori a
but
concern
we don't have evidence either direction.
yeah, yeah.
It's just like a big we don't
Yeah.
know.
But I guess a
Um,
reasonable concern right out of the gate would be that chronic use of such a compound could very well promote something like cancer in the long run,
yeah,
potentially.
potentially. Again, I think this is the big like what's the word? More hype than I think is probably reasonable because again, I just can't stress this enough. We don't know.
Right. Right.
Like there's no evidence in people to say it helps really, other than anecdote from online.
Hmm.
And you know, a anecdote is certain a level of evidence, the lowest level of evidence, uh, and good at kind of generating hypotheses and theories, right? And generating ideas for, hey,
Yeah.
we got to research this, but it's certainly not a way to claim like this is the new gold standard or everyone should be doing this.
Yeah. Is so like given how long we've known about BBC 157 since its discovery, since some preclinical research has been done. I don't know how long it's really been a hot topic, whatever that means, like at the level of hype it is now. Is that 2 years? Is that 5 years? My,
I
my
don't know.
question is really why haven't clinical trials on this thing been done yet, given what people are claiming about it? Is it just because there simply has not been enough time and to do these clinical trials, it just takes time, years of time to do this? Or is it kind of surprising that none have been done yet?
Um, I guess yes, it is surprising to me that none have been done yet. I do know as of like I want to say like a month ago, there's a phase 2 clinical trial for hamstring tears going on in China.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's new. But there's also a massive reporting bias in scientific literature for positive results.
Right, right.
So like it's very possible that people have done this already and just never got published, right? That's very possible. Most of the literature about BPC 157 comes out of one or two labs in the Czech Republic too, and that's also kind of a red flag, right? Doesn't mean it's what everything they're doing is bunk. I'm not saying that whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But when if there's only one or two labs that are finding all the positive results about something, that's that it means you need to squint at that a little bit more.
Right, right, right. No, yeah, I know what you're saying because you would expect if the results are positive and they're good and they're widespread, they're naturally, due to the incentives in the research world, you're going to have more labs from more places trying to tap into figuring out what's going on there and replicating those results and all of that. Um, okay, so people are injecting these. They're claiming it has beneficial effects for things like injury recovery, tissue repair, things like that. There's some reason to think that what people are reporting anecdotally could be true because it aligns directionally with what we know from the preclinical literature, but there's almost no clinical work out there published that really nails this down in humans. How potent are these drugs? So are they super potent and we're using tiny doses? Are they weaker drugs, and that's kind of why they're not like anabolic steroids. They're just kind of nudging things more in a direction, more gently, you might say. How are they in terms of potency?
Um, so I guess the way I would answer that is kind of like we just don't know. Because
Yeah,
one of the ways you figure out potency is with like dose escalation trials to see,
yeah,
hey, if I give someone this amount, what happens? If I give someone this amount, what happens? If I give
yeah,
a mouse this amount or a human this amount, what happens? Like that's hasn't been done.
hmm,
So I mean, there's I guess potency in the fact of like, hey, if I get a solitary molecule of this
yeah.
and give it to somebody, like it's going to have massive effects.
Well, I guess, well, yeah, no, I get that. Like, how much, like, when people are just deciding to use this for injury recovery, like, how much are they injecting, roughly?
It's a few milligrams. It's not.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess volume wise, it's
hmm,
not that much. If that's kind of what you're asking.
yeah, yeah,
But like from I guess when I think of potency in a drug, it's like we ha have some idea of kind of it's 1 to 1 at this dose, it'll do this, at this
right,
dose, it'll do
right, right.
this. And none of that has been established. So
Got it.
there's not really a way to say like you can look online and see what people have used for their injections, but there's
Yeah,
no way to say like, hey, this is the potency that it'll work for tendinopathy versus your
yeah,
knee arthritis, or maybe they're using like it 10 times more than they need to, or maybe they're
right.
like, again, there's none of that work has been done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it is kind of like a Wild West thing where it's like you've got all these interesting anecdotes. There's a lot of people using these, and word of mouth is spreading, but the research, especially the clinical research, is limited. So, people are just kind of deciding on what dose to take based on what their buddy told them, that type of thing.
Yeah, and Wild West is probably the good way to put it.
So you mentioned another one, TB-500. So BPC-157, we talked about that. TB-500, what is that one and how is it different? And then I want to get into this idea of stacking and why people are combining these things. But let's just start with TB-500. What is that one and how is it similar to or different from BPC-157?
So I mean, it's a completely different peptide. So TB-500 is just a smaller portion of thymosin beta 4, which is kind of the bigger peptide. And there's a lot more research in thymosin beta 4. But the TB-500 component of it is what's at least thought to be the more active part of the thymosin beta 4 peptide, where so that's what TB-500 is. Uh, and then stacking them, it's just kind of if they both work for the same thing, if I'm going to use them together, it'll work even better.
Yeah.
There's kind of this assumption of synergism between these two peptides that's being made.
Mm-hmm. And so when people say stacking, does that mean they're co-administering both of them at the same time, or they
Yep.
take one and then they take the other one after it?
Again, online, I've seen both.
Both.
Where
Okay,
it's
so
like
people are doing
inject it
all
at the
the
same
above.
time,
Yeah.
or you inject this one 3 times a week and this one twice a week, and
So yeah, so
yeah,
people are truly experimenting out there. They're doing like all of the different permutations of the stuff that you can probably imagine.
yeah, exactly. And they're saying it helps. Which I should say again, online, it's the same kind of positive reporting bias. If there if something seems to work for you, and the way social media
Yeah.
works, and that kind of magnification of positive things again, right? If
Yeah.
you are injecting yourself and you get a horrendous infection, because you like
Yeah.
that you're not most people aren't going to report that.
Yeah. Like if someone has like a remarkable recovery, they're going to be really motivated to talk about it. But if nothing really happens and you were just as achy as you were before, you're not going to
But
be as
that's not exciting. That's not
right,
going to get
right,
it's not going to get viewership. That's not going to get
right,
clicks.
right, right.
Like
And
the
of
banner,
course,
I tried the Wolverine stack and nothing happened.
yeah. Um, okay, and then like how much, I mean, I guess I want to get into so a lot of the stuff spreads by word of mouth. People are buying this stuff from somewhere, and we can get into that at some point.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's like marketing psychology that really comes into this because people want to sell stuff. Obviously, there's I'm guessing the Wolverine stack was someone's marketing idea, and it's really
great
cool
marketing.
sounding. Yeah, it's a really cool sounding name. What I don't know, like, where do you want to go from here on the subject? Because there's multiple directions we can go. So there's the sort of the science of this and like, does it work? And then there's like, how much of it's exaggerated because there's sort of a profit motive here and the whole marketing social media side of things. Let's stick to the science for a minute. So are you seeing people come into the clinic and they're doing these things, they're stacking these peptides, and it looks from your vantage point as their doctor, as the person watching them come in and charting their recovery as you see them, does it appear to be working in some people?
I honestly, I can't tell, and that's the way I would put it. 'Cause if you have a nagging elbow tendonitis or like a tennis elbow, lateral elbow condylitis, um, right? If there's a certain number of people that like, if they came to the clinic on day one and they just flared up and I do absolutely nothing to them, most of them are just going to get better,
Right, right.
right? Um, if it continues to be nagging and they keep flaring it up for the next 6 months, a lot of those people are still just going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
If I do nothing to them, I can kind of nudge those things along by sending them to the right physical therapist, giving them the right exercises to do. There's other things like platelet-rich plasma, PRP injections, corticosteroid injections, other things for those like ones that just won't go away. But I think a lot of people when they're getting to the point of like, I'm going to try some of these things that are I see online, like they've been having this issue for months and are on and off for years. And at the point that they use it and they happen to get better, it's like maybe it was from that, or maybe it's just been long enough that they're just going to get better. 'Cause that happens all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, some of it could literally just be the passage of time, and also, I mean, it's always good to remind yourself how powerful the placebo effect was. I saw this really interesting post someone shared the other day about one of the GLP-1 drugs, and it was someone who's like, someone online was like basically saying, "Holy shit, I lost all this weight in the first 2 weeks," and then like on week 3 or something like that, they come back and they're like, I just realized I never took the cap off the thing. I never injected myself.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. I completely believe that too. Right. And the power of placebo is real for sure. Right. And I think too, there's you can do things to amplify the placebo effect. And effectively,
Yeah.
that's what social media is in some capacity with a lot of these
Right.
things, or
Right.
just even for GLPs, right? It's because like I've seen these amazing transformations online from experts or like people that I trust. Therefore, it's going to work for me. And you could absolutely extrapolate that from GLPs or Ozempic or what have you to these kind of musculoskeletal peptides. Um, and
Yeah. Yeah. And so, as a clinician, when you, I guess, well, let me ask you this. I can't believe I forgot to ask this actually. Do you or other clinicians actually give people these things, or is this entirely people doing it on their own?
I do not, and no one that I work with does. I know, I mean, you can find private clinics that will prescribe them. I To be fair, I can't remember was it 2022 when these kind of were banned from that compound list. I think before 2022, a lot of these could be prescribed through a compounding pharmacy.
Mhm.
So since things got banned, I imagine the private clinic's ability to do this has gotten harder. This kind of, I guess we could talk about um, the kind of research chemicals, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is I think probably currently the most common place people are getting these. Right? If you get online and you search research chemical BPC-157 for sale, like you can find just lists of websites that will
Right.
sell
Right.
these, right? And
What, just so people understand, what is a compounding pharmacy exactly?
so a compounding pharmacy is just a pharmacy that can is with their licensing allowed to mix drugs together, really.
Yeah. So
So
when you
what it
think
comes
about
down
something
to.
like
So
the Wolverine Stack, it's a mixture of multiple peptides. This is the type of place that would put together a mixture like that.
yeah, and then but even for simpler things, you could think of like um, for some drugs, for example, you could say, hey, I have these three different creams that I have to use for my skin condition. Instead of buying these three separate tubes, I can get the compounding pharmacy to put them all into one. So that way I
Mm.
don't have to go this one, and this one. I can just do all at the same time, right? So and that exists for like normal FDA approved drugs.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to dig into a little bit more like the sourcing and the buying and the consumer safety side of this. So let's just chart out again for people where are all the places people are getting these things today? It sounds like some people, some of the time, can get it from a physician. There are private clinics that will do this. In some cases,
Yeah.
it sounds like there's just on the internet, you can just go find research chemical websites that will send you this in the mail, I guess.
Yeah. And out of morbid curiosity, I bought some once just to be like, how is like what's going to show up, right? Because there was initially I was like, this, I'm just probably about to just lose my money and I'm going to get like nothing, but it looked like a very real vial with a white powder in it.
Yeah.
I didn't use it, but I was, interested of like what's going to show up in the mail, like
Right. Right.
what like to the point of just like what's the packaging with this,
Right. Right. What
right?
did it look like?
It was just like a manila envelope with when and it came in a nice little cardboard box on the inside. But again, with that in the just manila envelope with this little box that looks semi-official, I was thinking, okay, well, like I don't know how shelf stable these products are. Like what
Right.
happens if this goes through the airport and it's really hot or really cold? What happens to the inside of this thing? Like I have no idea. Um,
Yeah, and it didn't. It sounds like it didn't come on like dry ice or something like that.
no, no, no,
Yeah,
no. So
uh,
I was just like, how
yeah,
like
and I guess we
very
would.
interesting.
Yeah, I said these are peptides, right? They're basically small proteins, as we said. I would imagine they can be, denatured and destroyed by radiation, heat, and all the things that any other protein could be damaged or degraded by. So I'm guessing these things aren't infinitely shelf stable. What do we know there about how sort of fragile some of these things like BPC-157 actually are?
I don't know. And I honestly don't think anyone else does either. Right. As far as I know, no one's been like, hey, what happens if we put through this the a box of these through the mail X-ray? When some mail goes through one of those big X-ray machines, like what happens to the compound? Like no clue.
And so how like do you have quite a few patients that you've seen that come in and tell you that they've taken these things?
I There's probably more than have admitted to it for some things. Um, there seems to be like if I'm gonna kind of just stereotype some of the patients that have come in and been using it, it's kind of like males between uh from what I've seen 30 to 50 that come in and what they've been struggling with something for a while will eventually either say, well, I tried this or I'm really interested in this. That seems to kind of be the demographic that has more questions about it. But and some of them have either say hey, I just ordered some and it's in my house. And they say, how should I use it? And they'll be like, I can't recommend that. And also, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So that's basically your position as a clinician for you individually. Like you don't recommend these things to your patients, and is your basic stance that we just don't know enough for someone like you to be recommending them to patients?
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't know enough to say this does anything or helps or hurts realistically. I mean, I know this is the numbers on what I'm about to say aren't probably completely accurate, but they're directionally accurate for like from preclinical literature, right? You got 1,000 compounds that are studied to go into human trials. Five of them will go into human trials, and one of them will get approved for something,
Right, right.
right? And so, like, maybe this is one in 1,000, or maybe it's 998, and like just the second that goes into human trials would get tossed out because it can't say it does anything. Like, we don't know. We haven't done it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it just
yeah.
hasn't happened.
Yeah, I mean, so the general read I'm getting is that there's just like too many unknowns here. So like, I could ask you about like the dosing and how much is too much. I could ask you about timing these things. Should you take them before sleep, after a workout? But like all of those things are question marks, it sounds like.
Yeah, and this is where kind of the amplification of the internet comes into this. I think that I mean this is the best example I think of kind of mm, the kind of the scientific pop scientific internet um overreaching available evidence to the greatest extent that I've seen.
Yeah, yeah. Have you seen anyone come in and they've told you that they're taking these things, or they did, and they had some kind of obvious problem? Whether or not you could prove it was due to the peptides, like, have you seen people take them, but then like their injury never resolves and it seems to be acting funny? Like, do you see anything like that?
No, I haven't. I I haven't seen anything like that. But some of that I assume would just be a sampling bias. So like I still don't have a ton of people that come in and there's probably been I don't know five patients in the past year and a half that have admitted to using it. That's not that many people for me to like draw vast conclusions on.
Got it. So, despite its growing popularity and more people are clearly trying and experimenting with peptides, few of them are actually coming in and talking to you about it. And there's probably some that are too scared to do that, even though they see you for whatever reason.
Yeah, or I feel like I've gotten more of the people on the side of like asking for permission to use it, kind of.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
that makes sense. They come in, and they're like, "Hey, I'm doing these other things. What do you think about this? I've got it at home. What do you think?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's good that you would create that space for people that way, because it's better for them to be talking to someone like you about it, whether or not you want them to do it or approve of it yourself. People are doing it and they should probably be talking to a physician about it. What,
But I
so,
could say most physicians, like, of my cohort of residents and the attendings I work with, like when I started looking into some of these a year and a half ago,
mhm.
there was none of them. I mean, I guess it's probably like you're talking to me. Like, there are no academic clinical experts on this,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
The,
yeah. So it's like, even if, so basically what you're saying is, for most people that are interested in these things and are experimenting with them, even if they go into the doctor that they already have, that they already see, once or twice a year, that person probably doesn't know much more than them about it.
yeah, and I think there's some of this is there's some siloing between kind of pop science and like actual like scientific academia, medical academia, right? There's some siloing between those two because, you know, an example, I think, at the AMSSM, which is the biggest kind of clinical sports medicine uh, governing body in the US. I think that, for this year's meeting, which is coming up in a couple of months, there were some private clinics that were asking, like, hey, can we do a session on some of these peptides so we can kind of learn about them and how to use them, yeah, use them and those things. And the response from AMSSM, rightly so, was we can't do one on it. There's nothing to say,
Right, right, right,
right?
right.
We have nothing to say about them because clinically, because that's what AMSSM is. It's kind of it's not the like it's not a conference about like the underlying bench science. It's a like translational, clinically, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like they're like, there's nothing to say about it because we don't have anything to say about it.
Right, right, right. Yeah. And that's just, I guess that's just part of the nature of the beast here. This is a Wild West thing, to put it that way. We don't know a lot about this clinically. We know not, we know some things preclinically, but maybe not as much as we would like to. And there's just not, I mean, yeah, it's just, there's just a lot of question marks. It's just mostly anecdote. And there are some physicians that are giving this to people, but it sounds like that's probably not a lot. And most physicians don't really know much about this stuff, no matter what.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Is it so when people go to a doctor that will prescribe this for them, when we think about sort of the safety and the purity of this stuff, you talked about shelf life, we could talk about contamination. If I'm ordering something online, you are kind of rolling the dice. Like, how well was, how good was the lab that put that together? How pure is the sample? Is there any contaminant in there? There could be. When people are buying them
Or
on,
is it what they even say it is? Is it just
yeah,
some,
some other peptide.
relatively inert substance, like like
Yeah,
like who knows what could be in there?
right, right.
I mean, a lot of these places, they'll click on the PD, like it'll be like, here, look at our PDF from our third-party lab that
Right.
says it is what we say it is to 99%. But like,
Yeah.
unless like,
Well, I want to add an interesting anecdote of my own here. Like, I worked in the marijuana industry for a number of years, and part of what
okay,
I did was I worked with data from testing labs. And I also know that the same thing is true in the world of supplements and you name it. Everyone out there needs to slash wants to say my product was third party tested. And many of them are, but despite that fact, you often can't trust these certificates of analysis because there's all kinds of interesting relationships that form between the manufacturers and the testers to provide the people selling the product with the certificate of analysis that they want. And to put it bluntly, there's a lot of fraud and adulteration and fudging of numbers and nudging of numbers that happens out there to make things look like they're more pure than they are, like they're more potent than they are, and so forth.
Yeah, and that's what an NSF certification in the supplement space gets you, or FDA approval. It's like, there's certain regulations and things that you have to meet, and labs that you have to be able to use that have been certified in these things.
Yeah.
That says the thing in the vial is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's sterile and
yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Let's just say you're one of these people out in the world. It's like, I'm going to use peptides. I'm going to try the Wolverine Stack, or I've already tried it. And they come to someone like you and they're like, maybe you're not going to prescribe it to me, but I'm going to get it from somewhere. Is there a clear rubric that they can use to say, like, this place is probably more safe than that place? Like, if someone goes to one of the physicians that will prescribe this for them, is that going to be a more reliable source than just some random website on the internet? Or not necessarily?
I don't know. Honestly, like they're probably like just like with anything, right? I think people are generally good, and for the most part, it's like I feel they're trying to sell something to help someone. They're do their best, but there's still a spectrum there, right? Of like,
Yeah.
Hopefully the majority of the places that are selling this are coming from a good place and they're really doing their best. But there's no way to know, as far as I'm concerned, where those are coming from, because none of it's regulated is the issue.
Right. If someone buys peptides from wherever they buy peptides, is there any way to get a sense for if it's actually what they think it is, other than literally sending it to a lab to do a mass spec or whatever?
No, I mean, that would truly be the only way, is like each batch you send it to your own third-party lab.
Right.
That's probably the only way to do that.
And just for those listening, that's probably not economically viable for pretty much anyone.
No. No. I think there was something similar to this relatively recently in the past year or so, where there's some creatine gummies that all these places were selling, and then someone somewhere sent them all off to a lab and was like, actually, they're all saying there's 5 grams of creatine in these things, and there's either none or wildly less than what they were saying there were.
Oh yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I can tell you, like, there's literature out there on, lots of stuff like melatonin. You pull melatonin off the shelf, it's supposed to be 5 milligrams. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 30, it could be almost none. In the marijuana space, I encounter this all the time, right? Everyone wants to have something that's 20 or 25% THC, and then you get it tested independently. It's almost always less potent than it is, or it almost always like had a little bit more mold than it was supposed to have, and like all of these things.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was looking into, like, hey, what would it cost to get this from like Fisher or something like that?
Yeah.
Like a big like national known lab, right? And I want to say like a normal vial of this stuff costs anywhere from like 60 to 120 bucks.
And how big is that vial roughly?
I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, but that would be,
but like it's a vial of like, that's going to be 1 or 2 doses in that vial.
Got it. Okay.
And the equivalent amount, when I looked at it from, what lab was that from? I mean, name one of the massive supplier. Yeah. Whatever, Welch out something.
Right. So in other words, 60 to 120 bucks to get a vial from, like, if you were to get it made at a big, super duper well-run lab that, can do everything at the highest standards.
It was $1,200 for the same amount.
Okay.
Right. From one of the, so no one is doing that unless they got a lot of money.
Yeah. So if someone's buying a vial of whatever, the Wolverine Stack or whatever, and it's $20, that should be suspicious.
Yeah, and that's where all of the research chemicals fall into for the most.
So you mentioned that there's like one phase 2 trial that's maybe happening in China. Is that kind of the only thing that you know of that's happening, or are you expecting the popularity of this to be creating more clinical trials to come down the pipeline soon, or do you know anything about anyone who's trying to design good
So
studies?
that's the only one I'm aware of right now, and that's a phase 2 clinical trial. So that's not even like the phase 3, big randomized step. The that's just phase 2. So I'm like I'm interested in these. Like, there's enough preclinical evidence to be like, hey, there could be a very solid there.
Right, right. The anecdotes match things that we know preclinically. So there could be a there.
Yeah, but we just need to take the time to do the annoyingly long, arduous process of seeing what one, is it safe? Two, is it doing what we think it's doing? And then three, does it actually work?
Yeah, yeah. What else are you working on in terms of like your research? Are you mostly doing clinical stuff right now, or are you doing any kind of research work?
So we're just in the process of we're putting together another similar review for thymosin beta 4 and TB-500. Um, I think there's obviously a lot of interest in this subject right now. And I think part of this is, in my mind, is educational for kind of the lay public, that all of a sudden like pulling off peer-reviewed journals online and reading stuff themselves. Which I think is really cool, that a lot more people are doing that.
Mhm.
So partly it's being written for them, but partly it's for also hopefully to educate clinicians about what is the evidence for these things, because they're getting more and more questions about them. And then if they're going to release or what's the word I'm looking for, unban 12 or 14 of these peptides in the next few months, um, hopefully some education for people out there just about perhaps what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah, so you did write that one review on BPC-157 that I looked at. I'll link people to that because I think it's a great resource. So you're writing one or two more reviews about some of these other peptides, so people can look out for that. Is there anything you want to reiterate from what we talked about today, or any final thoughts you want to leave people with on the subject? And let's maybe particularly think about people out there that are peptide curious or already using peptides.
Um, I can't speak to all peptides, but at least I can stick with the thymosin beta 4, TB-500, BPC-157, because those are the ones I feel like I know the most about.
Mhm.
There's good preclinical animal, rodent, mouse, rat evidence, right? But that doesn't mean that it extrapolates into people. Um, we don't know in either direction. We don't know if it's going to be harmful. We don't know if it's going to be helpful. We don't know the best route of administration. We don't know the specific tissue type it's going to work for. We don't know what doses might be helpful. We don't know. We don't know if you need like example, like sub-Q versus intra-articular versus peritendinous. All of it is people on the internet telling you this is what worked for them, and that's as far as it's gotten.
All right. Well, Flynn McGuire, thank you for talking to me about this. I know that it's an interesting but a tricky subject to talk about. And for better or worse, like there's just a lot of question marks out there. But the review that you wrote is great. There is a lot of interesting preclinical work on this stuff. So if people do want to learn, what we know from animal models, the link in the episode description will have that paper. And it sounds like there's going to be a couple more coming out. And I guess for better or for worse, we don't have that much clinical research coming down. So
Yeah.
if people are going to experiment with this stuff, just be careful, I guess.
Yeah, I guess last comment I would say is that, like, good science takes a long time.
Mhm.
And kind of in the internet age that we live in, everyone's really used to a fast pace and there's something new happening all the time. And that's just not the pace at which like good science happens. It takes, you know, 10 to 20 years from drug development to approval. Um, and like most people just aren't willing to wait that long for stuff.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time, man. Thank you very much. And I
Yeah,
hope
for
to talk
sure.
to you again soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Hey everyone, a great way to support my efforts is to visit my support page at mindandmatter.substack.com. A link to that page is in the episode description, or you can search for it on the Substack page itself. The support page has an up-to-date list of my affiliate partners. These are companies I work with, and if you buy those products through those links or using the discount codes provided, those will get you a great deal on a variety of products related to optimizing physical, metabolic, or mental health and vitality. These are all products I use myself, and some of them are directly related to podcast episodes or formulated by Mind and Matter guests. For example, there's a great product called Keto Citra, formulated by a kidney biologist who is on episode number 186. It contains the ketone body BHB together with several minerals in a precise ratio formulated with kidney health in mind. There are also links to products like physical technology devices to track your metabolic health, digital applications to help you find and learn about food and consumer products, and more. One product I use every day is the AquaTrue water filter. I recommend this to everyone because it gets everything out of your drinking water. Heavy metals, microbes, endocrine disruptors, microplastics, you name it. Other charcoal or gravity-based filters that a lot of people use don't get everything out, they just get some of the stuff out. So I really like the AquaTrue product. You can look for a link to my affiliate partners on my support page or directly in the episode description to this episode, or you can go to mindandmatter.substack.com to find it there.